Good morning. Thanks for coming out. Since we're at Western High School, it seems appropriate to thank you, Russ Roloff, this week, and God bless you and your family. What a cool teacher and coach and just guy to hang around. He really was. But again, thanks for coming out. You obviously care about this topic, or you wouldn't have sacrificed whatever else you had planned for today. And a little bit about what we're going to go through. And we'll have a break in here after a couple speakers. But obviously, feel free to get up and grab more coffee or food, or obviously use the restroom if you need to. There are restrooms over here. There are not any over there. So in about 10:30, 25 minutes, Mike Wilczynski will speak primarily, first and foremost, on the very serious consequences as defined by the MZEA, Michigan Zoning Enablement Act, that we are looking to write into our ordinances in Parma Township regarding this gravel pit proposal. He'll also speak. He's a certified professional hydrogeologist that we've retained. He, by the way, he works pro bono other than for food. So if anybody's good at baking, cooking, has a signature item that Mike, you want to run by Mike, he can tell you if you'd like 2 or 3 batches, I don't know. But my mom has made him a few loaves of banana bread already. Who's here has had my mom's banana bread? A few. Yeah, so she's done a nice job of greeting new neighbors with that up and down North Parma Road. Anyway, so Mike, we've retained, and by we, I mean the Parma Preservation Society, and I'll get into that in just a bit. But Mike is going to speak and answer questions, and then he can speak some more. He's worked in the gravel industry for decades, is a hydrogeologist. He's actually head of the Michigan Certified Professional Geologist, and he's retired now about 5 years, I believe, Mike?
Yeah, 2015.
Okay, time flies. He's worked with and still working with several townships around the state who are in a similar situation as we are here. Definitely an expert on the topic, definitely well connected throughout the state, including Lansing, lawmakers, township officials, legislators, etc. He's a leading expert in the state on this topic. In addition to very serious consequences, or VSCs, he'll also speak as a hydrogeologist to the effects of mining on groundwater and wetlands. After Mike, we also graced with the presence of Jerry Fisher, a distinguished professor emeritus, Western Michigan University Cooley Law School, and also founder of Fisher Consulting. Similar to Mike, Jerry's one of the leading experts in the state. His expertise is on aggregate mining law and regulations. He does not have a PowerPoint. He'll speak to the topic and have a Q&A after his. We'll have a Q&A for both Mike and Jerry after Jerry's session. So we're fortunate to have 2 of the best engaged with us in Parma around permitting, strengthening our permits at Parma Township, which also affects Sandstone Township. So why else are we here other than to just listen to Mike and Jerry on the realities of mining in Michigan, is to provide everybody an update on where we are regarding the proposed aggregate mine or gravel pit on North Parma Road, and also give you a little bit of an update on Parma Preservation Society, who we are, what our charter is, and so forth. And then also, it wouldn't be right if we didn't ask you for help, because we could use more help. We have a great team. This is a team effort to pull this together, and other meetings and websites and Facebook group pages, etc. But we need a bigger team. So you've already met Mike and Becky out front. They're definitely a central part of that team. They're fantastic, and they've already asked you for your contact information. If you've provided it, we'll use that as your permission, or we'll accept that as your permission for us to continue to keep you updated by email, as well as the website and the Facebook group page. So, a bit on the gravel pit as it relates to the current status in Parma. And before I do that, I'd like to thank specifically any Parma Township Planning Commission member that's here, or Township board member that's here. Thank you for being here. And our intent is to educate, energize, and just make sure we're working with facts and to help however we can, not necessarily to collaborate, but to provide information and resources to the Township and Planning Commission to help this process be as thorough and professional as possible so that the outcome is the right one, whatever that is. Well, that's certainly a popular opinion of many people here. I'm sorry?
Well, I do have one question before we get started here. You have a lot of good people that are going to speak today. But what I want to talk about is why a community doesn't want this and it's being shoved down our throat. I have yet to talk to anybody in Parma that says, yeah, let's put in a gravel pit. All right? We don't want it. Why do we have
We understand, and that's why we've put this together. So we'll have Q&A and inputs at the end of their conversations, and I feel your passion. Thank you for that. Love it.
Well, it's in my backyard, so.
And a lot of others. So here's the status of the application. So an application was received by the township in spring of last year, or actually the township, representative of the township board, met with the applicant to help them fill out the application against our current mining ordinances. And I'll get back to that. The application was then received somewhere in late summer, early fall, call it August, and if my facts are off, somebody please correct me, from either the PC or township board. And where we sit right now is that our application hasn't been reviewed yet, and I'm sorry this is kind of a review for many of you. We've had 2 meetings prior to this, with about 75 people per meeting. We have about 150 here today, so I'm kind of backing up for those that maybe are interested in where we are, and so I apologize if it's review and redundant for those that have been at the other meetings. But the Township Board and Planning Commission first has not reviewed that application. So our ordinances around aggregate mining are at least 22 years old. They're thin at best, very thin. Compared to other townships that have strengthened their ordinances, they're about 1/10, just to put it in that, as a percentage. Jerry Fisher has helped write some of those ordinances for other similar townships who are considering, who have to consider, have no choice but to consider a mining application. So we stand right now exposed with the ordinances as they are. Heard it said, others have heard it said that there's nothing that we can do, that this is going to be shoved down our throat like solar panels, and that we have to accept it. That is a false premise. It's just a completely false statement. Based on the best practices of other townships from a legal and regulation standpoint, Parma Township can absolutely change its ordinances after receiving the application. A moratorium is not required to do that. There is a statute that's called reasonable time to consider, which means that as thin as our ordinances are right now, it might take us a year of meetings, or it might take the Planning Commission and Township Board a year of meetings, or longer, as that's happened in other townships, to strengthen those ordinances. One of the townships where Jerry has rewritten, working with the township attorney, rewritten those ordinances is nearby Sharon Township. Over Irish Hills, Grass Lake area, Jerry, is there? Manchester, okay, thank you. They're in their second, they're over 2 years between rewriting the ordinances and reviewing revised applications around the ordinances. They cannot be arbitrary ordinances. They have to be defendable in court if it came to that. They have to be consistent with the MZEA, VSC, and I won't take, and Mike's going to go into those details. I just want to update you on where we are on this application. So, what are we here for? What are we looking to do today? It's to educate everybody here on where we're at with the Parma proposal, what's available to us in terms of our legal rights around changing our ordinances, and then reviewing the application around the revised ordinances, and to take our time doing it, to do it right. So that's a little bit about where we're at, and I'm sure I've missed some details, and that's fine. We can come back to those. Parma Preservation Society, a quick update on who we are. So the solar panels have been approved for, I understand, 1,600 acres in Parma Township. And there's new ordinances now being written around, how to, I don't know, just how to better review future applications for solar panels. And I'll just leave it at that. So this is on this gravel pit proposal, which will be highly impactful if it happens, no doubt. Seriously impactful on the community. Is right on the heels of that. And then the question is, what's next? And what's next? And what's next? That could impact our rural lifestyle, peace and quiet that we enjoy right now in Parma Township, Sandstone Township. Thank you for coming out, Sandstone residences and others. So we've formed Parma Preservation Society, or I'll call it PPS from now on, which is a fully volunteer new nonprofit organization. Lloyd McCormick, thank you for your help in establishing that. We are working towards our 501c3 to make us tax exempt. We plan to be by the end of the year. We currently are not. So the caveat on donating is if you donate and we don't achieve that status, which we expect to, but it might not be tax deductible. If we do achieve what we're shooting for in the 501c3 tax exempt status, any check written today, tomorrow, any donation made through PayPal, retroactively will be tax exempt in the 2023 calendar year. So here's the charter for Parma Preservation Society in a sentence. It's to preserve, protect the environment, natural resources, natural habitats of animals, and the people of Parma Township and surrounding townships. It's not just limited to Parma. That could include Concord, Spring Arbor, Springport, Sandstone, but the greater Parma area. And also buildings. It can include historic buildings as well. That's in our charter. Could be old barns, old homes, whatever project is decided on to, invest time and money and energy and resources into to work on. So our first project is this one. So it was formed as soon as we found out or it started to be formed as soon as we found out last August about this happening. So with that, we have some officers, Lloyd McCormick, myself, and where's Lucas Sponsler? Thanks, Lucas and Erica. I know she can't be here. They've just joined as officers. So here's a personal plea. If you're interested in being an officer, if you're interested in being a vice president, the president of Parma Preservation Society, please find me. We're looking for a leadership team. We desperately need a treasurer. As we just we'll start receiving donations. We just started. So that's basically the charter and a little bit on Parma Preservation. We have a website, parmapreservation.com. Visit it. I post quite a few updates in the update section. If you click on that, you can go to a lot of links on what's going on. Olivia does the same, Parma Preservation. Where's Olivia? Hi, Olivia, and thank you. She runs the Parma Preservation Facebook group page, and you'll see a lot of her posts on that. So we're trying to get the word out that way. You've also signed up an email. We'll follow up with you with emails as well. We want to keep everybody informed of what's going on and involved as much as you want to be. We could use help all along because this isn't a one and done deal. This is meeting number 3 of probably 30, and it's month number 6 of what could be 2 or 3 year process, right? So that's it on Parma. Am I missing anything, Scott?
No, I think you covered
to kick off? All right. So we'll come back to details. We'll come back to Q&A. Thanks for being here, and we'll move over to Mike, if you're ready, Mike.
Good morning. I'm Mike Wilczynski. I used to call myself a retired geologist, but I'm going to stop doing that because I'm pretty busy in retirement. I've got a bachelor's and master's degree in geology from Wayne State University. Took some postgraduate coursework in hydrogeology at University of Wisconsin. I started working in the mining industry in 1979, so I go back a ways. I permitted mines. I developed mines in the past throughout the U.S. I also worked in the oil industry and moved on to working for the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. Most of my career was spent working in oil and mining, either in exploration, mine development, or environmental. And then when I worked for the DEQ, I worked in trying to get contaminated properties redeveloped. While I was working for the DEQ, I also was teaching as an adjunct professor at Macomb Community College and retired from there after 13 years. About 2019, I got bored in retirement and started doing to me it was 2018, started doing some volunteer work with the DNR. And I led a nature hike at Island Lake Rec area, and someone asked me about gravel mining, and that changed everything. And for about the last 4 years now, I've been helping people review aggregate mine applications. I found there's a real need for this. A lot of the townships do not understand how to properly review a mine application. Some actually believe you can't deny an application. Carp Lake Township in Emmett County has 10 mines. They still don't believe they can deny a mine, even after I sent them the Zoning and Enabling Act. So I don't know, some people just don't want to listen. So when I'm going to be talking about very serious consequences, there's only certain reasons you can deny an aggregate mine in Michigan. You can't just deny it because you don't like it. You have to follow the law. So the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, I believe it's MCL 110, the reasons for denial is there's a lack of need for the material, a lack of demonstrated value. That means you have to show that there's something there that you can make money mining. Not all sand and gravel makes good aggregate. And then we have potential very serious consequences. What you do is you look at the value and the need, and you balance it against the very serious consequences that may occur as a result of the mining. And these are the very serious consequences. I've abbreviated them. You can read it in the act. It's a little bit longer. Relationship of extraction to existing land uses. You know, gravel pits, these are industrial operations. You know, they don't really fit into a residential area. Impact on existing land uses. Okay, how's it going to impact the surrounding area? We have examples of this as we go through this. Impact on property valuation. The mining industry, they'll submit reports that say there's no impact on property values when a mine goes in. And I think that's just kind of insulting to anyone's common sense. We have studies that show there is a decrease in value. And we've critiqued the aggregate industry studies as being irrelevant, mostly to Michigan. Traffic and pedestrian safety. These gravel trains, they take a quarter mile to stop when they're doing 55 miles an hour if they're in good condition. You have winding roads with school buses, mail trucks, and things like that. There's a traffic safety issue. Impact on health, safety, and welfare interests. Kind of self-explanatory. And public interest. What's the public interest in the mine? Do you guys want it or not? Yeah, that's what I thought you'd say. All right, I'm going to talk mostly about surface water, wetlands, and groundwater. Surface water is regulated under Part 301 of the Natural Resource and Environmental Protection Act, which is a state law, state environmental law. Wetlands are regulated under Part 303. Groundwater is regulated in various parts of the Natural Resource and Environmental Protection Act and REPA. Water Withdrawal Assessment Tool, and miscellaneous common law. Need to talk a little bit about geology and hydrogeology. There's a lot of misunderstanding about groundwater and how it behaves. A lot of people think it flows in rivers, and sometimes it does underground, but not here in this case. Most of the flow here is kind of through a porous material like sandstone. So it's flowing around the grains through pore spaces. It's not flowing through fractures in the rock as if you had a cave system with groundwater flowing through it. An aquifer is geological material that can produce useful quantities of water. Okay? An unconfined aquifer, there's two types of aquifers basically. One is an unconfined aquifer that's open to the surface, and I'll show a figure of this in a minute. And the other is a confined aquifer, which has an impermeable layer over the aquifer, and this can produce flowing wells at times. All right, here's an example of some aquifers. Here we have an unconfined aquifer. Here, this is the water table here where it's kind of in blue. This is saturated, this is groundwater. This little triangle upside down like that, that signifies the water table, if you ever see it. So here's an unconfined aquifer. We have all sand open to the land surface, so any precipitation that falls is going to go right to the groundwater. Okay, so open to the surface. Any spills that happen are going to go right to the groundwater. Unconfined aquifers are not that well protected. When they're putting in water supply wells, they generally look for a confined aquifer because that clay layer over it, or that impermeable layer, is going to help protect it from surface contamination. So here we have a confining unit. This is clay. This is impermeable material. You've seen this at parking lots where you have a gravel and there's some place where it's a clay and there's water holding up there. It's because the clay is impermeable and it's holding the water up. And so that's what's happening here. The precipitation goes through the sand and it hits the clay, which is impermeable, and it starts to accumulate and form groundwater in the unconfined aquifer. Now we have a confined aquifer. This is beneath the clay, and it is not connected. It's most likely, most of the time, not connected to the surface. Eventually, it does connect. You have to work out the geology. But anyway, you can see their different water levels are different. In the confined aquifer, the water level is higher. And so you can have different water levels from different aquifers. And so when people say that a lot of times for a mine, they'll look at the residential water wells and they'll say, well, there's no groundwater till like 50 feet. Well, you're looking at something, the confined aquifer, not the unconfined aquifer. And that's ignored many times. And it's this unconfined aquifer that forms the lakes, the streams, and the wetlands. And is the most susceptible to damage by mining. All right, when we pump a well, the water level is going to go down. Here we have a well that's it's got a pump in it, water's coming out of it. And we have the water table, would have been right through this dotted line, would have been fairly even. But then when we start pumping the well, it lowers the water table. And it's called a cone of depression. The more you pump, the lower it's going to go down, and the further out it's going to go. The same influence happens when you put a lake in, like in a mine. You change the groundwater flow. This mine is proposed to create a lake. When you create a lake, you change the groundwater flow. This is a river, but imagine it's just a pond. Ignore the flow direction. I have a hard time finding figures that aren't copyrighted. And so this is just showing a river, but this would be the same as if it was a pond, a wetland, or a river. But you can see the water is higher here. The groundwater is higher and it's lower at the surface water. It's flowing to the surface water. In Michigan, that's the normal case. Groundwater flows to surface water. Here you can see if the water level's dropped and the surface water is flowing into the groundwater rather than groundwater flowing into surface water. This is not a usual case in Michigan. Neither is this. These are more typical in arid, semi-arid areas like the West, where you get a lot of evaporation and not much rain. So this is typically what we see in Michigan. So as you can see, as you lower the surface water, you can also lower the groundwater. They're related. You change one, you're going to change the other. And here's the way wetlands can form. Here we have is called glacial till. Just think of it as a clay material. It's not going to allow water to flow through. So we have water ponding in this bowl here because this material is impermeable. It's not going to allow water to flow through it. And then we have groundwater below here flowing. Now you can imagine if we have a mine going in and we come in here and we cut right down through here with the mine, what's going to happen? All this water is going to drain out and flow into the mine. You've ruined the wetland. And I have some examples of this. And groundwater fluctuates. It's not one level all the time. It fluctuates a couple feet a year, even in very stable areas. So you have to take that into account. Many times they won't do this. They'll just give you one elevation and say the lake's going to be at, say, 650 feet, and everything's going to be okay with your wetlands. However, if that lowers to 648, you're going to drain your wetlands. So you have to really know the range of the groundwater elevations throughout the year. It's typically lower later in the summer and higher in the spring. Here's what happens if you go through one of those clay bowls like I showed you and you drain the wetland. This is a pond. It's drained. There's a person standing there to give you a scale. Back here, there's the berm. This mine went in. We met with Eagle and told them this mine went in. This pond was going to disappear. The wetlands in the woods to the right here would disappear. They didn't believe us. They didn't stop the mine from going in. The mine went in, and this dropped, and it's still gone. The latest from Eagle is they said it might be a seasonal variation. And no way. It's dropped this 20-foot drop in places. And it's not coming back. That's not a seasonal variation. And the wetlands are dry. So Eagle kind of dropped the ball on this one, and they're kind of hoping it goes away. This is in Gaines Township, Kent County. There's another view of the pond, just emptied. It was a little bit over an acre. The woman that, we're going to show a video later, and the woman that owns this farm is going to be in the first one. And she talks about the silica dust and how the mine going in ruined her livelihood, and her home went down in value by $150,000. This is silica dust. This is her farm. This is where that pond has appeared. She has a horse farm. This is a helmet laying in her stable. This is only a couple days accumulation. Yet the aggregate industry will say silica dust doesn't leave the mine. All right, here's your proposed project. Was a minor road to the north, Parma on the east, about 300 and some acres. And you have some wetlands here. All the colored in area is potential wetlands from Eagle's wetland viewer map. Here's the mining part. Here's the parcel that wants to be mined right in here. So you can see you got a little bit of wetland, potential wetland here, here, and a lot in here. Now, if there's wetlands, you can't, this isn't an exact delineation. This is an approximation. If there's wetlands on your property or close to it, you have to do an on-the-ground delineation of the wetland. You can't just use this map. This is an approximation. So a wetland delineation would be required under Part 303 to make sure that you're not going to impact any wetlands. Again, you put in a lake, what's going to happen? You're going to change the groundwater flow. You could potentially lower the water enough to start impacting wetlands and surrounding surface water. So what you need to do is a hydrogeological study to determine what's in the subsurface. This is a geological cross-section. This is like if you took a slice through a layer cake, and it shows what the geological material is at depth. And this is for a mine that was in Berry County, Hope Township, that was denied after about 2 years of going back and forth with the mine applicant. They were very hard to get any kind of information out of. The mining industry will say, townships started delaying our mines, but they're not giving us the information that people need to properly review it. The problem is mainly with them. So anyway, the mine applicant didn't provide any geological information on this project, so I put it together and put together a cross-section. They said they weren't going to impact any groundwater. However, I looked at residential water wells and put together this cross-section, and you can see here's the water level, this blue line right here. All of this blue is wet, it's groundwater. Here's their proposed mine level, this yellow. I mean, to me, I think they're going to hit water. You know, and so this is the kind of thing you need them to prepare. Geological cross-sections, so you can see what's going on in the subsurface. Here's the geology of your area here. You have a lot of sand and gravel. This is a part of a geologic map published by the state of Michigan. It's called Farrand and Bell map in 1982. And it's for the whole state. It shows pretty much what the geology is like. Green has a lot of sand and gravel, potentially. And so is the more pinkish color here. So you have a lot of green and pink around here, which means you have a lot of sand and gravel. The best places to look for sand and gravel are the boundaries between the pink color and the green. And here's the proposed mine property right here. And you can see it's perfect. It's right on the edge of this green material, which is called a moraine. And these moraines, the green material, that's where the ice stopped while it was retreating and stayed stable for a while and was dumping a lot of material out and just got piled there. And that's called glacial till. And then the meltwater from the glacier, it carries some of the material away. It carries the finer material further than the coarser material. So gravel's the coarser material, it's going to stay closer to the moraine. So that's why that's the best place to look for sand and gravel deposits. A little more detail here. Here's the moraine. This is the glacial till, just unsorted material dropped, and then all of this is sand and gravel in through here on the property. This is a LiDAR image. LiDAR uses lasers from a satellite, And it strips away the vegetation. So it just shows you the ground surface, which is really cool. It's been used a lot in archaeology. They've been finding villages down in South America using this that they never knew were there before because it was overgrown by vegetation. Here's the mine property right in here. And here's a little wetland that flows off of it to the southwest. And this whole area here, the surface water, looks like it drains into this wetland here. So if they mine this area, they're also going to be impacting the surface water flow. Your township ordinance is pretty weak, but I went through there and I found one part that I like. It says you cannot change the direction of surface water or groundwater flow. This mine will do that. So that's something, that's positive in your ordinance I think we need to take advantage of. Okay, how do these mines operate? This is a mine in Grass Lake Township, Jackson County. Currently, the Department of Health and Human Services is conducting an environmental study around this mine because of the apparent cluster of illnesses around it. This mine's been in for about 15 years. We have people with strange cancers, respiratory diseases. I found silica dust in their homes. Eagle does not regulate the amount of silica dust that comes from these mines. They're exempt. There's a criteria for airborne silica dust, but rock crushing is exempt, as long as you don't process more than 2 million tons a year. So OSHA heavily regulates silica dust in the mine for the workers, but once you cross the property line, no one cares. Everyone's left on your own. So anyway, how does this mine operate? The actual mining is going on up here. There's a little dredge there that's mining below the water table. The material is going through this hose, or this 12-inch, I think it's about 12-inch, polyethylene pipe, and being discharged here. So you can see a lot of moving of the groundwater, a lot of changing of groundwater elevations because you're changing the surface water elevations all the time. When they're not mining, this lake here pretty much dries up. So again, you're changing the groundwater flow every time they start up. This mine's been shut down, by the way. This lake here to the north is over 5 acres. And under Part 301, you need to do a hydrogeological study and get a Part 301 permit to create a lake. This place never did. They violated it. They came to the Planning Commission to renew their special use permit. They said the lake was only 3.5 acres. It would never reach 5 acres. One of our members happens to be a U of M aerial photographer. He flew over with his helicopter and took some nice photographs for us. It shows it was 10 acres. So Eagle shut down the dredging. However, they are still being allowed to mine above the water table, but the dredging has been shut down for about 2 years now while they're doing their hydro study. So you're mining in the aquifer, you're mining in people's groundwater. Here's the property that wants to be mined again, right around in here. All these dots are water wells. And so they're going to be mining right in the middle of all your drinking water. Definitely we need to know how it's going to impact wells in this area and the surface water. There are some artesian wells in this area, and one of the things I'm concerned about is that as they go deeper into the mine, they may remove a clay layer that could destroy their flowing artesian wells. Okay, that was the glacial material. That's the material that's recent. It's about 20,000 years old. It was dumped by the glaciers when they were here. Underneath that, we have a whole different world. We have hard rock, not the soft stuff that's at the surface. And it's about several hundred million years older than the surface material. So before the glaciers came, Michigan kind of looked like Utah, had canyons and things like that. And it's all been covered by the glacial material. So these are the bedrock formations. You can see they're kind of like a bowl. They're kind of like a target. And that's because one formation is inside of another one. So it's a bowl that's been filled up. It was a basin filled up with material. So each one of these, you can consider this is a bowl, different colors, a different bowl, with this one being the smallest, right there. And one further out, the largest. So that's kind of how the bedrock geology of Michigan is. And I'm mentioning this because When you're pumping groundwater for processing minerals, you not only can pull water horizontally, you can pull it vertically. And you can pull up poor quality water from deeper in the groundwater system. Brine, for one, so you don't want salty water. And also arsenic comes up sometimes in parts of the state. The bedrock contains groundwater with a large amount of arsenic that has to be treated before it can be used. And right here, this is mapped, it doesn't show up very well with the lines, but this is the base of fresh water. This kind of tells you at what elevation you're going to go start getting out of fresh water. And it's around 800 feet here. I think ground elevation at the mine's around 1,000, 1,050, something like that. I'm not sure exactly. So it's only a couple hundred feet. There's a potential if they pump too much, you could start pulling up poor quality water into the aquifer. And so that needs to be addressed. Okay, detrimental effects of gravel on mines and property values. This study was done up in Benzie County. There was Inland Township several years ago. There was a 180-acre mine being proposed to go in, surrounded by Parma National Forest, or State Forest, and right in the valley of the Platte River, which is a trout stream. They did a study, and they determined $14 million in depressed property values if the mine went in. I can give you links to these studies. You can read them. Hope Township did another one in Berry County. I think they came up with $35 million in their area. Here's what a mine looks like. Now, property values. Look at this house. This is an old schoolhouse. It's been converted to a house. Would you pay the same after this mine went in as before? Yet the aggregate industry wants people to believe that this is not going to change the value of their home. It's just they think we're stupid. This pond disappeared, by the way, when they went in here and created this mine. You can see here it's starting to slough off, and this is Kalamazoo Highway, and I was getting kind of concerned that it might start impacting the road as this is just sand and gravel and it's just collapsing. All right, here's another one. Would you want this berm in your backyard? This is right on their property line. Just a pile of dirt, all around an 80-acre mine. You know, and yet they tell you we're going to be a good neighbor. You know. Here's silica dust. This is how bad it can be. Remember I said Eagle doesn't regulate this. You can't have a reduction in visibility of by more than 5%. They care about opacity, total dust. You can't have an increase in opacity of 5%. At that point, you're getting acute concentrations of silica dust. All right? Silica dust causes silicosis, lung cancer, tuberculosis. It also, people young and the old are especially susceptible to silica dust, as any kind of dust. No dust is good for you. Silica dust, in addition to just being dust, is really bad. The fine particles that you cannot see that travel the farthest are the ones that get deepest into your lungs and cause the most problems. They're very sharp. They destroy lung tissue. And it's irreversible, kind of like black lung. And here's a chart, and it kind of shows how far material can travel. We have a wind speed of 3 miles an hour. It'll go, a half a mile, a 10 microgram particle. That's real small, smaller than your hair. Go down to 5, which is even smaller. We have a 3 mile an hour wind. It'll travel 2 miles. There's been studies done in Europe where they found the silica concentration downwind of a mine is twice as high, half a mile away, as it is up gradient. So silica dust is traveling, and it does travel great distances. You can't see it, the stuff that's the most dangerous. And again, it's not regulated. This is exempt. All right, here's some contact information. You have any questions? Pangea52, yahoo.com, that's me. I'm with Pangea Environmental LLC, the company I started after an attorney for a mining company got really nasty with me and made it sound like he was going to sue me, so I formed a limited liability corporation and told him to go to hell. And here's some additional information. Frac Tracker, there's a two-part article there that I wrote a year ago on permitting mines in Michigan. It might be something you might want to take a look at. We'll probably have, if they're not on the Facebook page or website, we can get these on along with some of the other articles. So I'm going to hold questions until after Jerry speaks, if that's okay.
Thank you, Mike. That's just the tip of the iceberg, no pun intended. But Mike can speak for hours on the topic, and also from specific experience with mines, proposed mines, failed mines, et cetera, throughout Michigan. And so when we get into Q&A, he can refer to specific examples. Before Jerry comes up and speaks, since we're now going to change from silica dust and groundwater and wetlands, and by the way, the links to the articles that Jerry showed, like on silica dust, et cetera, those are on the Parma Preservation website. You can find them there. The study that he referenced, just in Richland Township, over by Kalamazoo, Battle Creek area, by the Upjohn Company, on the impact on homeowner value, is also on that website. And around the immediate area, it's 40%, half mile out, 30% negative impact on property value, and then go another, concentric circle, another half mile or mile down to 20%. It's significant, it's proven, and as Jerry has said, or I'm sorry, as Mike said, virtually all studies done by the aggregate industry, whether it's on impact on residential value, silica dust, groundwater, wetland, traffic safety, they've all been deemed inconsequential. Why? They're run by a lobby organization, MAA in Lansing, right? These studies, Michigan Aggregate Association. So they're extremely biased. They're basically meaningless. So for whatever it's worth on that. So before we go to Jerry and talk about regulations, laws, the history of regulation and laws in Michigan around aggregate mining, and there was a handout at the table that Mike and Becky had. I want to just explain where we're at here in Parma on this proposed mine. So it's more of a test, a petition, if you will, than anything else, just to see how well it was received and where people stood on the topic. Mike and Becky McKinney, Scott and Monica Penrod, my brother Bill, knocked on about 350 doors in Parma Township with a petition. 348 people signed it. So we kind of got a feel on that one. Here's what the petition language said, and I'll just read it. And again, apologize for the redundancy for those that you already know, but there's a lot of new people here. 1, table further action on reviewing mining applications until such time as the zoning ordinances of the township have been updated to provide strong protection from any of the very serious consequences, or VSCs, incurred from local mining operations per Michigan Public Act 113 that Mike referenced. That's number 1. Strengthen our ordinances first and just basically just table it. Table's not the right word, I guess. It's stop. You just don't, right? Take input from a wide variety and significant number of residents and base decisions on any changes to current agriculture and land use for mining development upon the consensus of opinion expressed by voters. So take public opinion, all of it. Seems pretty standard, pretty simple. 3, fill the vacancy on the Parma Township Planning Commission Committee Planning Committee, with one of the applicants living in the affected area by the proposed mine. Not biased or unbiased, or one way or the other. Everybody's biased, by the way. There's no unbiased person. But just somebody from around the area. We've been told no on that. And then the fourth one, as it relates specifically to what Jerry's going to talk about, update the outdated zoning ordinances and requirements for mining applications pre-2000 to provide strong protection of our rural preservation zoning per the 2016 Parma Master Plan, and require mining companies to satisfy all very serious consequence requirements, as well as provide clear methods of recourse if mining companies fail to follow all terms specified, which has proven to be the case time and time again with many of these mines. So that was presented to the township supervisor, I don't know if it was November or December, a month or two ago. Mid-December, so a little over a month ago. There hasn't been a response yet to that, to the petition.
The response we did get, Gar, remember, was for one of the requests to fill the planning commission with a new member, that is not going to happen. So the only response we got to those 4 requests was, as Scott just mentioned, is just a hard no on one of filling the open planning commission seat with somebody around the proposed mine. That came from the township supervisor. Pertaining to the open seat on the planning commission.
There is already a person on the track commission that lives in that area.
Okay. All right. Then another one. So, 2016 Parma Master Plan. The mine that's proposed is in direct violation of that master plan. The master plan also is on the website. There's a quote from that master plan that's on the front page, top front page as you go onto the website. There is a link to go into the master plan so you understand more of the details around it. Not the entire master plan, but the master plan as it relates to agricultural zoning. The land that the proposed mine is zoned Ag 1, prime farmland. And so Jerry can speak to that. So I just wanted to give an update on where we are from a petition and response standpoint to that petition. And where is Jerry? Hey, Jerry. So again, Jerry Fisher. Yeah.
Nice job. Good morning, everybody. Nice to be here with all of you. I'm from over in the Clarkston area, Oakland County, and I'm happy to say it was a beautiful drive over here, and it was beautiful when I got here, so it's a beautiful place that you call home. We'd like to keep it that way. Yeah, happy to be here with you. So my background, generally speaking, I think it's a good idea that Mike presented some background for himself. And by the way, it isn't that often that you get a hydrogeologist that comes and speaks with some knowledge about the groundwater tables and the surface water and all of that. So consider yourself very fortunate to have Mike come and speak on this subject, because it's very helpful. So I am not as much of a scientist as Mike. I am a lawyer, and so I practiced law for many years, 30 plus years, as a municipal lawyer, representing cities, villages, and townships. And I've got a lot of scars, a lot of battle scars. And I see what courts do and have seen that many times over the years, what legislatures do, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And so I'm a little more conservative, you might say, in the things that I think are definitely going to be received in one way or another, because I've made presentations to courts. You know, it's the whole idea is you go to court. You never tell your client we're going to win this case because it's such a strong case, because you never know what a judge is going to do. Believe me. And these battles go on, and then you go to the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court and all that sort of thing, and you just never know. Part of it's politics, part of it what the court's background is, and all that sort of thing. So you really have to be cautious in some of the things that you conclude quickly and present and rely on, and as you prepare your game plan. And preparing your game plan is very, very important. So I practiced law for 30 plus years as a municipal lawyer. Then I stopped actively practicing and became a full-time law professor at Cooley Law School, and enjoyed that a great deal. I taught property law and constitutional law and local government law at law school for 15 years. And in that time, I started doing a lot more writing, and so I've been a co-author of a book on municipal law for Michigan, and a co-author on planning and zoning law in Michigan. And then I retired from law school in 2019, and I wrote a book on local government law for local officials. So rather than a book for lawyers and judges, and there are lots of them, there aren't any books on local government law for local officials. And so that's what I wrote. And I just continued to be, and continue today, to be a consultant for local governments primarily, but also for lake associations and things of that nature. So more specifically in terms of mining, I have been working on gravel mining ordinances, defending situations, negotiating with gravel mining outfits for 40 years. And so I have some instinct and understanding of who they are, what they are, and all of that. And let me just give you some thoughts, just a few thoughts. Now, there's a tendency to think these people are all jerks. They're all bad people. They're gonna rape and pillage and all that sort of thing. Some are bad. There's no doubt about it. Some are bad. They're not all bad. Some try to do the right thing. And and I can tell you that courts don't think they're all bad. So when push comes to shove in a controversy, the court isn't going to say to everybody, these people with a mining interest are coming in here, with a limb half sawed off already. They're going to look at them as business people that are around to make a living, and they will be told, the courts will be told by anybody involved in these processes that the state needs gravel, sand and gravel. Why? For construction. And there's just no doubt about that. We need gravel. And these people will be coming in and saying, look, you need my gravel. If I wasn't here, you couldn't fix these roads, you couldn't build homes and subdivisions and do all the things that you need to do. So you're going to get that. And I know you're probably going to say, Gar, why did you bring this guy here? He's a pessimist. But I just want to give you reality. I just want to give you some reality, because you have to have reality in these battles. You have to be in it for the long term, and you're going to see some pluses and some minuses over time as you go along with these things. You have to stay the course. And as you look at what the mining company is doing and figuring out what your game plan is to be on the other side, or to look at things objectively, just remember one thing: they're not here to make the community look beautiful. They're not here to do this, that. They're here to make a dollar. They're business people. So keep that in mind in terms of what you are telling them that they should do, should not do. You can just expect their reaction to be on the basis of what it's going to do to their bottom line. Keep that in mind. And also keep in mind that as you approach these things, you're going to be provoked. You're going to be provoked. They're going to say things that you're going to really dislike, and you're going to think that some of the things they say are outrageous, but don't fall into the trap of becoming emotional about it. What you want to do is make your game plan ahead of time. Stay with your game plan. Stay with your game. I mean, obviously you have to be nimble. You're going to have to make some adjustments along the way, and depending upon what the facts are as they roll out. But stay with your game plan. Don't let them provoke you to say things that will go into the paper, the judges will read, and all that kind of thing. Just stay rational and stay with your plan. I can tell, I've been involved in a lot of these things. You have very good leadership here. And that's a really great thing, not because they brought me here, but because this is so well organized, and they're basically telling you that the fight is just beginning. Nobody's telling you that just because you're here today, it's a done deal, and the game's over. But it's not. This is the beginning, and there'll be a lot of fights. And so stay with your leadership and help them out all you can. Okay, I did put a little sheet out there on some of this history, and as Shakespeare says, history is the prologue for what's to come. And so I think there's no doubt about that. And it's good to know what the history is, because things don't change that dramatically. And so this history is important to know. So pre-1982, and I'm not going to be here for hours, going year by year, I promise. But pre-1982, the rule of law was that gravel was considered pretty much like all other uses. What does that mean? That means that when a mining interest came in to propose a gravel pit in an area, the question was, is this a reasonable use? And the township board or city council, village council, whatever, but usually township board will make a decision in their discretion on whether this is a reasonable use, just like they'll make a discretion on whether an apartment building ought to go in or a commercial use ought to go in. Is it going to be reasonable in that location? And that's the way it always was. And that's what the court, U.S. Supreme Court said in 1926. And the Michigan courts said that all along. And in 1982, we had a Michigan Supreme Court justice that was sympathetic to construction and building people and gravel interests. And that Supreme Court justice, wrote an opinion, Silva versus Ada Township, in 1982 that essentially gave gravel mining interests a huge leg up and said that the gravel mining interest is going to win when they come in. They're going to win unless it can be demonstrated that the result of this proposal will be a very serious consequence to the community. Now remember, this is not the legislature talking, this is the court. This is a justice writing an opinion for the court, and the courts really are not lawmakers, they're really interpreters and all of that, and reviewers. And so this justice wrote the opinion, created this rule, and that rule stayed in effect until 2010. That's a long time. That's a long time for that rule to stay in effect. And at that point, in 2010, there was a community up in northern Michigan, Casson Township, and Casson Township was blessed and cursed, as it was blessed with all of this beautiful gravel in the ground, probably as much or more beautiful gravel concentration than anywhere else. And so they were cursed in the sense that all gravel mining wanted to be there. And as a result of the 1982 decision, they had 9 gravel pits in the town. And I mean, the population was low. It's like a gravel pit for every family. But in any event, so somebody came in and they wanted another gravel mine in a semi-residential area. And the circuit court judge said, look, we've got this 1982 decision, and I think I'm going to have to grant it. And the case went to the Court of Appeals and then to the Supreme Court. And I had the pleasure of arguing this case, writing the brief and arguing the case in the Supreme Court. And one of the great days of my life, we got the opinion and we overturned the 1982 decision. And the court said that this decision is the courts can't make this kind of decision. They said, this is a legislature. This is a legislative decision, not a court decision. And so the court in the Supreme Court, Michigan Supreme Court, in 2010 overturned that case and said that this rule doesn't exist anymore. So, and this will give you some indication of why I am somewhat conservative about these things, because within 6 months after that, the Gravel Association, the lobby people, got the Michigan legislature, not 1 or 2 legislators, but got the House of Representatives, and that you have to go, if you're going to do some legislation, you go through a committee of the legislature. The committee is supposed to have hearings and then send it to the full legislative body, and then send it over to the other house, and that another committee go through it and have hearings, and send it to the full body, and then it goes to the governor. They got this done. They got Act 113. We've talked about, you've heard about Act 113. They got Act 113 passed in 16 days. 16 days. So it would go through a committee, and it was wired. It was wired. So the association spends a lot of money on lobbying, and they've got a lot of clout. And I went in there to the legislature, to the Senate committee, and they were talking about very serious consequences. I said, let me see a show of hands on how many of you committee members have any idea what a very serious consequence is. They had no clue. There were no standards in the statute that was requested, and so at least I got a senator to require the industry to negotiate with me to put some standards in Act 113. So the standards that Mike mentioned here about the impact on local land use and the impact of the haul route and public safety and public interest and all that we put in there, they weren't even there. They didn't exist before. And that was just fine with the gravel industry. It was just fine with them. So after 2010, we've got the very serious consequence rule back in there. We've got a few standards that will work out with that, and that will be your saving, and we'll talk about that in a second. So the legislature reestablished the very serious consequences rule, and I have to, as I mentioned, I'm a little more conservative about this. One of the things that Mike had up on his screen is that you can deny an application if you don't think there's enough need. You have to be careful with that, because that's not exactly what the statute says. The statute says you can only deny it if if the proposal would result in a very serious consequence, not that there's no need. The applicant has to show the need for it, but that isn't a basis for denial necessarily. So you have to be careful with that. You could say there's low need, and if there's very low need, that means that it's going to be easier to show a very serious consequence, because who needs this? If there really isn't a need for it, then why should the community suffer a very serious consequence, a terrible consequence? The other thing is that the question is whether you can deny it, whether there's a potential for a serious consequence. In your game plan, you don't want to think in terms of proving a potential. You want to think of proving that absolutely there's going to be a very serious consequence. You want to think, give yourself the toughest standard to operate from, because that is going to increase your likelihood of winning. Where can we focus to show that this is really going to be bad? Not that it might be bad, because the courts might not agree with you if it might be bad. You want to have overwhelming evidence that this is going to be really bad, not might be bad. Okay. Where have we been recently on this subject? I have been working with several communities on gravel mining. The one that has carried a huge amount of effort and weight in fighting gravel mining is that the industry is unsatisfied with just having very serious consequences. They have been attempting since 2018, every year since then, they've been attempting to create a statute that takes away all local government participation in determining whether a mine should be sited in a particular location. They want either the gravel mining interests themselves to be self-regulating, and we all know that would be helpful, right? Or they want the Eagle to have the final word. And Eagle, obviously, if you have any history working with a state agency like Eagle, most of the people there are well-intended, and they usually know what they're doing, but they have a complete lack of a sufficient number of people to do the work. Their budget isn't big enough to do it, and if Eagle was going to be involved, it just would not get attention. And what does somebody in Lansing know about Parma Township? Very little. And so we've been fighting that battle every year, all the time. I've been to Lansing and testified at hearings many, many times to try to hold them off. And I mean, we've been holding them off since 2018. It's an incredible thing. Now we're going to see what happens in the current term. They're gearing up again. And as I mentioned, they spend a lot of money. They meet with just about every legislator in the House of Representatives, the Michigan Senate. They are probably, as we speak, they're like bees. They're really working hard at it. I mean, you got to give them credit for going after their interest, but they're working hard at it. And my group has lobbyists as well, and we're doing work on the other side of it, and hopefully we can prepare a good bill that will be as favorable to us. But bear in mind that fight is going on in the Michigan legislature as well, and will undoubtedly continue. So, more specifically, as Gar indicated, I believe that the community can amend the ordinance. You have an application that's come in, and when can you not amend an ordinance? You can't amend an ordinance to apply to a particular use once the use has been approved and development has started. That's the Michigan rule for what they call vested rights. And many of you have heard the term grandfathering. It's kind of a grandfathered thing, but you don't get vested rights or grandfathered interests until you've been approved and you've actually started construction. That's the rule. So if somebody has filed an application and they're waiting, that doesn't mean, especially since the ordinance does not address the standard that applies under Act 113. So what is the sense of that? I mean, it makes a lot of sense, and a judge would be very sympathetic, in most cases, that you're trying to update your ordinance to conform with state law that's been on the books for 12 or 13 years now. And, you know, once it gets up to court and you don't have a good record made at the township, that's not good. So you want the record to be made at the township based upon the rules that will apply, namely the Act 113 rules. And as I mentioned, I've been involved in that process for a while. In 2016, I was involved in amending an ordinance for the Township of Metamora. And actually, we did a moratorium there. I don't think you need to do a moratorium. I think it kind of muddies the water up. But that case went to the Court of Appeals, and we won that case in the Court of Appeals on the ground that we are really just trying to create the correct set of rules. So I think that is something that you want to do. You want to amend the ordinance, and you want to make sure that the applicant is required to demonstrate, because this is what Act 113 says, the applicant has to demonstrate what the need is for their sand and gravel. Who needs this? I mean, is it needed right here? Is it needed within a certain distance? And believe me, it's too expensive to truck this stuff you can't truck it 100 miles. just too expensive. So, somewhere 25 to 50 to 60 miles is probably the limit. And so the need is going to have to be shown within that area. And if there, as I say, if there's no need, or I'll put it this way, if there's a very low need, that means that you are going to have an advantage when you get to very serious consequences. So they're going to have to show, number one, the extent of need, and number two, it's the burden on the property owner, the person proposing the development, proposing the gravel mining, to show that there will be no very serious consequences. So instead of just thinking of this in terms of these very serious consequences, VSC, think of NVSC, that they have to show the N. They have to show there are no very serious consequences. The burden is on them. But as you make your game plan, as you prepare for this, you want to show that there will be very serious consequences. You want to take that upper hand for sure and make that demonstration. Because one thing you can be assured of, these people involved with gravel mining, they've been through this. They're sharp, they're really sharp people. They will show, they'll make a really good case that there'll be no very serious consequences. Will they skip over some things that are relevant? Absolutely, absolutely. But brush that under the rug. But at the end of their case, it'll sound like this is going to be a wonderful thing. All the values in the surrounding area are going to go up. You're going to have this beautiful lake, and all these things that are great for the community, and all that. So. You have to be in a position, you have to do the preparation, define your goals, and realistically to show that there will be a very serious adverse consequence within that list of uses. I pointed out in the note that I prepared that a good list in the Sharon Township ordinance that I think is available to you. The good list is in that ordinance a list of standards that takes the list that Mike had put up on the screen and actually breaks it down into a lot more things for you to think about and make your case on. So even though Act 113 is kind of stacks the deck in favor of gravel mining to a degree, there are successes when there are problems. I mean, if a gravel situation can be put in without really creating a problem, then it ought to go in because we need gravel. But if it's going to result in bad things, then by all means, it's up to your group and up to the local government to point that out and to take the action accordingly. So there is in Grass Lake Township, there was a case where the local government acted favorably and the court overturned it. And why did they do that? Why did the court overturn it? Because there was an inadequate showing in the details. Not conclusions, not saying this is really going to be bad. This is really going to be bad. That won't get you to first base. You're going to have to say, this is really going to be bad because of this, and then have all the details on that, because of this, have all the details on that, and because of this, all the details on that, and I know Mike is probably thinking already all the details that'll go into the list, but that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have all those details, and just like many other lawsuits, these things are won and lost on the basis of a lot of sweat, a lot of hard work, looking at, getting right down to the details, making sure that you've dotted all the i's, crossed all your t's, and have got your presentation down to a science. All right, I think we're going to be available for Q&A whenever Gar gives us the word.
Thank you, Jerry. Thanks, Jerry. So we'll jump into some Q&A here in just a bit. A little bit on Sharon Township's ordinance that Jerry helped the Sharon Township attorney write, as he referenced, over, I don't know, whatever period of time that took, a year or so.
No, very short.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, that's why it shouldn't be a problem. You can do it probably 60 days.
Okay.
Get it done in 60 days. The shorter you can get it done, the less likelihood of problems.
Great. And then there was a revised application submitted then by the mining company. Their application went from 40 pages to 350 pages, right?
Yes.
So now Sharon Township is and the Planning Commission is in the process of reviewing that revised application.
On very serious consequences. They reviewed it on need and concluded that there was not adequate need. I mean, there was low need.
So they've proved low need, which helps their very serious consequences chances. Okay, and how long ago was that application submitted? Just to use Sharon as an example to continue.
The original? Oh, a year ago.
Yeah.
A year and a half ago.
Yeah, I think it was. It seems like it's closer to 2 from talking with them, but so you're just really now beginning the process, a year and a half to 2 years into it, all over again, with the new ordinances and now the revised application around those ordinances.
On a very serious consequence part.
Okay. All right, so that's an example. Sharon Township's in the middle of it. Have talked with 2 townships and the citizen groups that have had mines, just as an example, denied. Richland Township, over by Battle Creek, Kalamazoo, referenced earlier, the Upjohn study on the impact on home values was one. And I talked to the lead attorney who represented the citizens. In that case, it was, because I had to ask him, how long and how much money, did it take? And it was 2 years and $200,000 after the application. So in all, it was about 3 years. Another one, Grass Lake, that Jerry referenced in speaking with Grass Lake, the attorney that actually came to our last special meeting in December, Robert O'Reilly. He's from the law firm that represented, and he was part of the team representing the citizens of Grass Lake that rendered the opinion from Judge John McBain, who would be the judge in Jackson Circuit Court and appellate court that would oversee anything that would make it to court here. He ruled in favor of I guess it was Friends of Grass Lake, and I had to ask Robert as well, how long and how much money? And it was funny, he said 2 years and $180,000. So, as Jerry referenced, this isn't a quick thing. We're just at the very beginning of a long battle. I don't want to say, a battle against the mine as much as I want to say to get it done right, to do this right, and let the court make the decision with the strongest ordinances possible. And that's just what we're up against. This is going to be a long-term project. There'll be a lot of the meetings around it, et cetera. One of the things my brother Bill has reminded me of a couple times, that actually, when I look at this, instead of being doom and gloom and negative or pessimistic, is from the first couple meetings, the one thing that this has done is it's brought the community together like never before. I'm meeting people that I've never met before or haven't talked to or seen or in decades. And I'm sure you're experiencing some of the same, and I hope that's the case. This actually has an opportunity to be an extremely powerful, positive impact on Parma, Sandstone, really anybody who wants to participate and support the effort and come to outings. I see it being more than, this is a very academic, pretty dry, some detail, but it's to help build a baseline so that you understand some of the facts and realities around aggregate mining in Michigan and also around this proposal. But I also really, even beyond that, it's created the Parma Preservation Society, which hopefully will extend in, to the next generation in terms of a group of concerned citizens, talented people with passion for protecting our lifestyle. So already there's a positive outcome with Parma Preservation Society. It's just beginning. Where can it go from there? What barns, building, historic sites, natural habitats, farms, what else can we do working, hopefully, with the Planning Commission in Parma Township, not against, with, right, to help protect our township, multiple townships. So already there's that that's come out of it. On North Parma Road, there's now a community event, in the summer, a gathering, and that's a fantastic thing, and it's growing, right? So what can we do here with Sandstone and Parma Township and anybody else who wants to get involved in terms of future community events that could be fundraising events? I'm thinking, like some other townships have had, bands and et cetera, and made a community event out of it. So, there's some positive that's already come out, and we see that also as just beginning, not just, the work ahead, but the positive side of it also. Anyway, so with that, what questions do we have for Jerry and Mike? Oh, hi, Barbara. Barbara is the president of Sharon Preservation Society.
I have a question for Jerry. By the way, you guys have some great speakers here. Gotta say that I work with Mike as well, and I know Jerry's work. Jerry, is there such a thing as a cumulative value of lesser serious consequences? In other words, do you have to prove one, or is there such, can you prove a number of things that have a cumulative value of very serious consequences?
Did everybody hear the question? No. The question is, would you prove just one serious consequence, or would you prove several that would apply cumulatively? I think I have that correct.
Or if one is, if you're going for you can't prove one to be at the highest level of proof, if you have a number of them put taken together.
Okay, so if there isn't one that is a game changer to say no for sure, but you have several that cumulatively are really bad if you look at them together, then that should apply. And no doubt that is correct. That really the issue for the township and later for the court, if it's challenged, is whether the proposal as a whole is going to result in a very serious consequence. And so if you put all the little factors together and it would result in a very serious consequence, that definitely counts.
Sorry.
So that's all right. Thanks, Barbara. Other questions? And Karen's offered to run the mic for us. Thank you, Karen.
You have to, because I have to get it on the recording.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like one of the biggest problems here is the water table and also the dust. Considering our bodies are 3/4 water and the rest of it's air, it seems like this affects our health, our cattle, your fields that are growing, the bees and everything else, the nature process of this is going to be affected. The dust is the worst thing on it and that. I don't know what it does to the grounds, to the crops and any of that. Is there any input on that, what it does to the ground? Does the water table, will the rain seep through the dust back to the water table? There's a lot of questions here. I don't expect them all to be answered, but These are what concerns me.
Yeah, and those are all things that would be addressed in a proper hydrogeological study. They would have to look at the impact on drinking water, and water availability, water quality, and how it would impact wetlands and inland water. And most townships do have a requirement for a hydrogeological study, at least if you're going into the water table.
Is that considered an environmental impact study?
That would be part of one. A hydrogeological study would be a component of an environmental impact statement. Yeah, your environmental impact statement, I mean, that term is misused a lot. There is a definition and a CERCLA, I guess, for what it really is, but it also takes into account impacts on the economy, the culture, and things like that in environmental impact statements. So the geology, hydrogeology would be part of that. Yeah.
When it comes to the need aspect, do we need to determine how much is available from the existing mines in the area?
You're the expert on this.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. I mean, if 100% of the need is satisfied by other existing mines in the area, then there would be very low need for a new mine. Keep in mind that the whole justification, at least in the court opinions, the whole justification for this rule is to make sure that there is an adequate supply of sand and gravel, natural resources, to satisfy the public interest in this material. And so if you show that there is inadequate, there's already a satisfaction of all the need, then the justification for this higher standard goes way down. And so that's the whole point of this. It all actually, there's a lot of logic in it, that if you don't have any need for this, well, why are we giving you this big special treatment? And so that's the way I would look at it. And if you can demonstrate, and you definitely want in your application for this situation to make sure that there's an obligation to show all the other sources of sand and gravel that could supply the need, which would undermine the need for the sand and gravel from this site.
Hi, I'm Phil Campo, and we live on North Parma Road, and I've just got two concerns. I wanted to try to form them into a question. The first one has to do with the quality of the ground and the water, as you mentioned here. If we end up with a brownfield, this is what our decision makers should be thinking about. If we end up with a brownfield in our backyard, they can cost a lot of money to fix. I mean, I was involved in a brownfield cleanup that was polluted by others. It was $5 million to fix that. Our little company spent $800,000 so that we could purchase this property and take the brownfield to complete closure, which we did in mid-2000s. The point I'm trying to make is the decision makers at the township level should be thinking about what's going to happen if something goes wrong. If there's a fuel spill, if there's something happens just in the normal course of business working in this property, who's going to be responsible to clean it up? How much money is going to be set aside to manage that cleanup? And if they run out of money, it'll become an orphan site, and we'll have a brownfield in our backyard. So however we want to turn that into a question is Q&A. The second concern on a personal level, we just live down the road from this project, and getting in and out of your driveway when trucks are coming down 55 miles an hour right now is a challenge. And as I get older and my grandkids come over, and it's not just me, there's several in our little area there, they come over the hill 55 miles an hour. If they need 200 yards, did I hear someone say, to stop? That's a problem. So these are just little things I think about when I'm thinking about this project. Thank you.
this might be off the key a little bit, but I worked with stone for quite a few years with granite. And we tried to get health insurance there, and after about 6 months, the guy went up and said, "Why didn't we get health insurance?" He goes, "Well, it's very dangerous that you work with silica. It's cancer causing." And a couple of guys there were very upset not knowing that, and how it alleviates in more of the smaller your lung is, how more it's contaminated to you. Thereafter, we had to wear masks, and it's a lot more serious than people think it is, the silica, and how far it goes, and how small it really is non-seen, and it ends up in your lungs. We live out here to enjoy the environment of health. You know, I grew up in a big city and big factories, and now I'm out in the country, and it seems like you can't get away from it. And it's sad that our health has to be surrendered for money. And that's the issue I'm very concerned with. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to second what Gar had said earlier about meeting our neighbors and how nice that's been for me as I've been going house to house, and my wife and others. The question that I have, and I'm not sure who to address it to, but there's a couple of administrative boards in Sandstone Township that I'm not sure are taking a position on this, and I wonder why. And one is the Sandstone Township Board, and the other is Western School District's board. I understand they're not in Parma Township, but my question is, why should they be concerned about this? And question two is, what influence would they have on this kind of a situation? And my third question is regarding revenue. Would it be accurate to say that Western School District will be getting more revenue based on a gravel pit going in? So why should they be concerned? What influence do they have? And what amount of revenue might Parma or Western School Board expect to get from this?
Well, I can begin to address some of that. So why should these other boards be concerned about it? The truth is that, and I don't know exactly what the road patterns are for the haul routes, but to the extent that the haul route is going to go through Sandstone Township, I think they really need to be concerned, because if they're not, the people are going to hold them accountable for not being concerned and not participating. The broader point, though, is this. When we have appeared at the Michigan legislature to discuss these issues with committee members and so forth, committee members of the legislature, they have one thought when a hired gun like me gets up and makes an argument, but they have a much more receptive view when local officials weigh in. And so when a hearing occurs, it would be very helpful to have local elected and appointed officials that have some expertise in the subject matter to get up and speak and explain why it is in the interest of the Parma Township Board, ultimately, their planning commission initially, and I don't know whether the Township Board under the current ordinance is a decision maker, but the board should be a decision maker ultimately. why they should be considering certain issues. And I think there's a lot more receptiveness when local elected officials and appointed officials get up, along with citizens, of course. But the elected officials have been chosen as representatives to speak for the people, and there's a lot of receptiveness to what they have to say. As far as the taxable value would be, I mean, there might be a higher tax rate on a productive, if there is a productive industrial site, based upon revenue production and so forth. But remember that that's temporary. I mean, when the site is done, it's probably going to be left in a state where it may be less of a revenue production. So, I mean, you have to think of the short and long term of it.
Thanks, Jerry. I was going to let Mike answer some of that
Yeah.
as well. Regarding the revenue.
Yeah, there's no revenue based on how much you mine going to the local governments. Senate Bill 429, as it was proposed, had a $1 a ton fee, I believe, that was going to go towards Eagle for enforcement, things like that. But there's really no benefit except for like the valuation, as Jerry was talking about. And one of the things that we really find is reclamation plans are kind of like pie in the sky. I don't see them being fulfilled. I mean, I wrote mine plans back in the 1980s, and I'm looking at them, and the subdivisions that were supposed to be built on these lakes in New Jersey still aren't there. You know, so they make all these promises that we're going to build this great subdivision, and many times they just don't leave the land in a condition that it can be developed. You need to have a certain spacing for water wells. If you don't have a central sewer system, you have to have large lots because of septic, and then they're all going to the lake, so you have to worry about the quality of the lake water. So, you know, they say these are all going to be turned into these subdivisions, and, you know, they're still sitting in many places. And once you mine this, there's really not much you can do with it. You can't turn it back into agricultural land. The topsoil's gone. The structure of the soil's gone. They say they're going to lay it back on there, but it's not just the thickness of the soil, it's the texture. It takes years to develop soil. You just can't throw something down and expect everything to take. So you usually just have grasses or invasives taking over these, and they have abandoned lakes. So, you know, the reclamation is a real problem. The bond that is put up is usually way insufficient. The most recent estimates that we've got for land recontouring, about $8,000 an acre, and that was supplied by a miner for the reclamation plan. And they didn't have topsoil, so that'd be another $4,000 an acre. Looking at $12,000 an acre, and the bond was $2,000. So this LLC, when they're done mining, they just close up shop, and they lose their bond because it's cheaper than reclaiming the land. So we have a lot of abandoned land, not only in Michigan but countrywide. You know, we're not unique. Ontario, we've formed an alliance with a group in Ontario that they're having the same issues that we are.
Good morning. My name is Dale Gade. My question is for Jerry, and by the way, both of you gave tremendous wordings for us. But Jerry, is there any knowledge on this company being, like you said, either a good guy or a bad guy? Do we have a history on them? Can it be found? Do they keep up their promises? Do they just walk away and leave you behind? And any history on this particular company?
Yeah, I've dealt with Chip Tokar and his company, NRM. You know that pond that I showed you that disappeared? And that woman who had all the dust on her property, that's Chip Tokar. He did the environmental work and said nothing would happen, and the pond disappeared. You know, he noted there was perched groundwater present, which we did too. But he said nothing would happen if the mine went in. He was wrong, we were right, but no one's making good on it. The company walked away, leaving the landowner hanging there without a lake. So that's an NRM, my experience with them.
Two questions. I wondered if any of our local representatives are here from the state. And Secondly, I see none. Sarah Leitner, no. Mike, how much water do mines use? And just generally the purpose of all the water?
Yeah, you need the water usually to wash the aggregate, or sometimes even to transport it, because they transport it as a slurry through a pipeline sometimes. The wells I've seen proposed are like 1,200 gallons a minute for a mine. Recently, I'm reviewing one for Sharon Township, and they're proposing, I believe it's 6,000 gallons a minute to come out of a 2-acre pond that they're going to build. That's a lot of water. I mean, that's the highest I've ever seen. But you're looking in thousands of gallons a minute, enough that it could be, significant impact. Once the lake goes in, they're mining in a lake, though, it's kind of a closed-loop system. But it takes a while to get to that point. You have to mine above the water table first, and then you go below the water table. So until you get below the water table, you generally need processing water. You also need water to control dust. They should have water trucks running around the mine, keeping the material wet to minimize the amount of airborne dust that gets into the air. The other problem is they don't just use water sometimes, they use brine, and it has high concentrations of sodium chloride, things that are regulated, and they're spreading this around the mine. It can get into the groundwater, and that's one of the concerns. And I believe it's still legal to use oil-filled brine for dust suppressant, which means you can have up to 1,000 parts per billion total BTEX, which is the main contaminants you look for in gasoline. The cleanup criteria for just one of those, benzene, is 5, but you're allowed to have up to 1,000 in the brine that you spread. At least, I think that's still current. So that's one of the concerns, just what they use for dust control. Even calcium chloride adds chloride to the water, and that can have an impact on crops, irrigation, and things like that.
My question is regarding the land use. Looking at all the maps, this area is pretty much an agricultural preservation area. And now we've had 1,600 acres go to a solar project, another 333 acres proposed for this project. Is the agricultural preservation area basically a meaningless designation, or how is it so easily swept aside?
Well, I don't know what the actual soils are on this property. In other words, it's in a district that it calls for agricultural preservation. So the first question would be, does this particular property lend itself to that classification? Is this really high quality agricultural land that should be preserved? And if that's the case, there's a theory that I've been developing on this subject, and I would really like the opportunity to present it at some point in time, and that is this, that under the Michigan Constitution, it's Article 4, Section 52 of the Michigan Constitution, basically says that the development and preservation of natural resources is of paramount public concern. And so the gravel mining interest seize upon the word development. And they say, well, the development of natural resources, which mining can be considered, would be of paramount public concern. But if you have a special natural resource, and certainly farmland, high quality farmland, particularly in a preservation area, should, if the land satisfies that classification, is a natural resource that should be preserved as well. And I can tell you that I have done an analysis of the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, and particularly relating to special land uses and things of that nature, and the objectives of zoning in the first place, and they all lead in the direction of preserving natural resources. And so the preservation of high quality farmland, which we all know is needed, is something that I think can be converted into a very strong argument on the assumption that this particular land lends itself to that definition as well.
Thanks. Thank you, Jerry. Keith Hacker is the supervisor of Sandstone Township and wanted to answer a question over here.
I guess I don't have to introduce myself now. Thank you.
No, make a longer introduction.
Oh, make it longer. I just wanted to address your question over here about what Sandstone Township is doing. The Township Board did discuss the mining operation that's proposed and has raised some concerns. The board asked me to draft a letter. I have done that. I will present that to the board at their next township meeting. And after that's approved, then I plan on sending it to the Planning Commission, the Parma Planning Commission, the Parma Township Board. And now I just told Gar I'd send him a copy of it too. But the Sandstone is concerned about what's going on. And unfortunately, we're not in the process of approving or disapproving, but we felt like it's important that we express our concerns. Thank you.
Well, I'm Lloyd McCormick, and what brought me here today is God. That's who I represent. I'll get over here, but I have a nonprofit and public charity I run in Jackson, and I just serve and help communities. I mean, I make no money doing it. I just when God calls me somewhere, I pray on it, and I just know when to go and help. And I mean, I work in the south side of Jackson. I got a building and a ministry there, and He called me back to my hometown of Parma when this happened. And I prayed on some things, and what this gentleman said, I can understand that, but what you also got to understand these situations, this is private property. And there's certain rights that people have for reasons, and I'm totally for you, so don't go there. But when you work with these people, and I've talked with Kathy Schmaltz, Sarah Leitner, I mean, I'm a lobbyist, I guess you could say, or just a consultant, I mean, basically. And I don't have any degree. I'll kind of dumb it down for you guys, because that's typically what you got to do. Sometimes I need it done for me, you know. But regardless, this is a big business. I mean, there's been 2 nations founded under God, and that's Israel with Moses and the United States, one nation under God. I mean, and we've lost track of that. Money and greed is what drives everything now. It is. I mean, and it's a sad thing. I mean, trust me, I'm guilty of it. I got a family full of business owners, and they're all growing, and things happen. I mean, certain things come about in society, and you got to put down your torches and your pitchforks, because that will get you nowhere in this fight. You're going to just mess everything. I mean, but if you read legislature and your ordinances and how things work, this private landowner has rights, and it's his land. Now, a lot more plays into that, and it's going to take years to expose it. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on. And what I'm telling you right now is, as a community, I've come here, I've got probably 80 hours, 90 hours at least involved into all this nonprofit stuff, getting the 501c approval, you know, getting all of our tax ID number, doing all this stuff. I'm lobbying. I'm talking to the senators. I'm talking to representatives. I mean, I've got a ton of stuff I'm doing. I'm worried about going to take food to a guy living in a motel with his kids who's homeless. And I'm here for you guys right now, and that's what I'm more worried about. But regardless, what this is going to take is, when you fight these fights and you want to do it the right way and you want to win, there's 1,700 people, I believe, in this township. Get your wallets out. I started this nonprofit because what it's going to take is money. And that's the only way you win this. I know it's a broken system. It's messed up. You just worked your whole life for retirement and your money. So understand, the only way you can fight these fights now, why I started this, is because God shows me things. I mean, I pray on all this stuff. You're going to have to get your wallets out, and we all have an obligation. I already made my donation. I already set up the accounts. I did everything that I've done. And I'm telling you, if you want to win this and you want to win this fight, it's going to take 3 or 4 years and a lot of donations and a lot of money. And it's sad it's that way. I mean, but that is the way of the world now, and that's your answer to winning this. Getting mad, getting upset. We got to jump through the hoops. And if it was a perfect world, of course, all the people voted, the lawmakers would just shoot it down. It don't work that way. It don't. People have got to get paid. And lawyers got to get involved, and you got to jump through the hoops, and that's what it's going to take to do this. And it's a sad, hard truth, and that's reality now without God in our government. And that's what I lobby for. I know there's separation of church and state. I don't belong to a church. But my whole goal is to put God back in this country, because that's when greed won't drive things like this, and the people will have a voice. And God's people who I see here, I see God in every one of you. That's why I'm here fighting for you. That's why I'm lobbying. That's why I'm doing stuff. So that's how you're going to win this in the long run. I mean, that's your answer, and you can ask questions all day. They've got all that put together, and that's what'll win it.
Let's do this. Let's go out and gather. Let's take a break. For those who want to come back and watch the video, you're more than welcome to. We'll show it. But let's gather together. Or leave, just leave if you want to. But let's take a break and come back for those who want to come back in about 15 minutes.
If you go to YouTube and just do Progress Michigan Aggravated is the name of the video series, just came out yesterday. It talks about silica. They have people from Michigan State, U of M, covering some of these topics. So if you don't watch it here, watch it at home.
Again, you can go on the website and click on the link under updates, and Mike will introduce the videos, and we'll go from there.
All right, you want to start part one?
Oh, y'all gotta be doing better than that. The horses make more noise than that. Come on. Are you having a good time? That's right, you gotta work like California. All right, then we're gonna let the good times roll. Here we go. Ready? A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, yeah!
Anna says she picked this place where he farmed 16 years ago because of the agricultural zoning she thought would protect the rural atmosphere that she was looking for. She worries that dust will hurt her horses and that the noise will make them skittish and risky to handle.
Let's have some fun. It's recording. It's
When the mining company asked to change the zoning for the property next door, she made her case against it against township officials in a series of hearings, but it did no good. She was shocked to find out that zoning can't stand up to gravel mining. Gravel is not everywhere, so the industry believes it needs to dig it out wherever it is to keep construction costs down.
So to disrupt the life and to devalue, I mean, I had an assessment done on my home and it's dropped $100,000, and that was already, that was when they were just they hadn't even started yet. Just the idea of having a gravel pit on your back property line in your backyard, it's like toxic waste dump, landfill, gravel pit. The three most devastating to the value of your home. Everything that I have done, the fencing, it has been to improve the land, to be very animal safe, so to my animals, to the wildlife. I've spent 20 years really cultivating the ecosystem and the community, and they have in just 2 years destroyed so much. And they do it with a shrug, and I was actually told, look, we all know nobody really wants a gravel pit in their backyard, but we all love the amenities that gravel gives us. So, sorry. The idea of having, within 100 feet of my home, and where my kids are riding, where I'm working with young horses, there's no way anybody could be safe in that. So there's dust going to be on the hay that my horses are eating even, the grass that they're grazing on.
When we've talked to local residents about these issues, I think first and foremost, residents are generally concerned about the dust from these facilities. And when we're talking about dust, we're not just talking about dust in your house, it's kind of a nuisance. We're talking about air pollution. We're talking about particulate matter pollution. Stuff that can aggravate asthma, that can cause asthma hospitalizations. So that's what residents are really concerned about is, particulate matter pollution that's going to be coming from these kinds of facilities.
out of UC Davis have shown that horses that do get silica, or silicosis, there's a connection between that and osteoporosis. So I would say, as a breeder, the two worst things that could be introduced into my environment are dust and noise. Horses with bad lungs and bad bones are a little bit hard to sell.
You want a part two?
Yeah.
Yeah, go about a minute in and just get the music.
It was turned out to be considered a fraudulent study by the state auditor general, saying the aggregate industry had undue influence to the report. But the report stated that there was an aggregate shortage in Michigan, and we needed to open up more mining and make it more accessible here in Michigan in order to get more aggregate, especially when it comes to road construction.
That's being justified based on the argument that there's a real need for sand and gravel in Michigan, and you can only mine it where it exists. Well, my understanding is that's based on a single study that was done with funding by the aggregate industry that was pretty high altitude and not very detailed.
The aggregate industry states one of the reasons why there's a shortage is because there are communities across Michigan that are just denying permits left and right. While there is really no evidence of that being the case, that is what came to light around the legislation that we see here today.
So there are some reasons where there are places where there really is a shortage of sand and gravel supplies that would increase the impetus to want to allow sand and gravel mining. But again, we don't really have a good sense of where those places are because that kind of thorough resource mapping effort hasn't been done.
That is part of the problem right now, is that we don't have a set of shared facts in the aggregate mining discussion, in part because of the way the industry is set up and there's a lot of proprietary information. Just how much aggregate is out there, how much aggregate is owned and can be accessed by the myriad of private companies involved in the work, we don't know. There is no statewide data that can be affirmatively said.
It's a little bit hard to believe that a state that exists as a peninsula in the Great Lakes and is underlain seemingly everywhere by sand and gravel, that there's a crisis of sand and gravel needs.
And in fact, to our knowledge, we export materials, we export aggregate supplies out of state. A perfectly appropriate activity from a trading perspective, but then again undermines the idea that we actually need these materials from a public policy perspective.
I'm Mike Wilczynski. I'm a certified professional geologist with Pangea Environmental LLC. I have over 40 years of experience as a geologist, much of it in hydrogeology, related to environmental situations, and also mining and in the oil industry. I've worked as an environmental person and also as a mining geologist. I permitted mine, so I understand the issues that need to be addressed. I've worked for major oil companies such as Gulf Oil, Chevron, several major mining companies, International Mineral Chemical for one. Also, when I retired from the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality as a senior geologist, that's now EGLE, the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. I also taught for a number of years as an adjunct at a few different colleges. Since I retired from the DEQ and teaching at Macomb Community College, I got involved doing nature hikes with the DNR, and that led to helping community groups better understand the environmental implications of aggregate mining, so that they can better regulate the mining and express their concerns to the townships which regulate sand and gravel mining in the state of Michigan.
There are always, of course, NIMBY concerns with industrial activity. And aggregate mining is an extreme industrial activity in the sense that it's very loud, it's very noisy. It stirs up a lot of materials into the air. Those fine particulate matters, the silicon dust, the type of airborne particles that can be breathed in and become quite dangerous at certain levels.
Clearly, there's overexposure to silica in these sand mines, so the Michigan Safety and Health Administration, which inspects these mines multiple times a year and does air sampling, there's, a quarter to 50% of them will have overexposure above the standards of silica, so that occurs. And so there is definitely the risk.
Well, that dust. That's silica dust. Not only for silica dust is the variability of the operation. You see here that they're digging right now, and so this part of the mine has a dust being generated, or another part won't. Wind condition changes, and so it's very difficult to monitor the amount of silica that comes from one of these operations. They're just so huge, covering sometimes a couple hundred acres. Where do you put your monitors? One place may not generate silica dust at all, another place is generating a lot, and it changes depending on what they're doing. The gravel industry, sand and gravel industry is exempt from monitoring for off-site silica dust, although they are required to monitor on-site for their workers. So their workers have respiratory protection, but the people around the mines don't have that because it's poorly regulated right now under EO. The gravel and the stone crushing industry, more precisely, is exempt from that. They don't have to monitor, they don't have to comply. And that's scary, especially when you start seeing areas that have apparent clusters of illnesses. Oh, 3, about a minute in.
He had no idea the dust contained silica, the same deadly dust that would eventually kill him at 39 years old. Myself, I had no idea that the industry that I fell in love with, actually we were releasing this deadly dust onto every construction site. I don't think anyone would mess around with asbestos because they know what it can do to you. Silica does the exact same thing. Uncontrolled scarring of the lungs, there's a long latency period. It's not going to hurt you today or tomorrow. It's going to get you to try and enjoy your grandchildren in retirement. That hurts because I know exactly what their families are going to go through. I don't have many memories of them. Most of them were around the disease. Helping him carry the oxygen tank to his bedroom. I don't wish that on anybody.
A wave of fear was sweeping the country. Silicosis was taking its toll from the ranks of American workers. Cause of the disease, dust. Results of the disease, disablement, poverty, death. Cure for the disease, none. Throughout America, workers exposed to dust grew fearful of their health, of their very life. 1936. Amid these alarming events, the Secretary of Labor called together a national conference to study this disease. A committee of 60 experts was appointed, and a year later reported to the Secretary of Labor.
I saw the video. I thought, how did we miss this?
But let's hear from Ms. Perkins herself.
I can it be my duty to make this report available to the working people of the United States and to their employers by every available method. This report shows how silicosis occurs, where it occurs, and what the disease is. and it makes recommendations for its practical control. Above all, the report emphasizes that these control measures, if conscientiously adopted and applied, that silicosis can be prevented.
Silicosis can be entirely prevented. The Division of Labor Standards will give you full information. Stop silicosis.
It took 30 years to even be able to talk about it. And when I seen the Stop Silicosis video, I knew I had to step up and hopefully try to save someone to go from going through what my family did. A lot of stolen memories. And the Hawks Nest mine disaster, where it's estimated that 1,000 people, if not more, had died from silica. It was one single incident, point in time, where they decided to do something.
They worked with virtually no protection in a tunnel filled with silica dust. 476 men died here from silicosis.
Every day I hear of someone dying with silicosis. I worked until I got sick, and the doctor told me that it was silicosis.
The next year, 1936, the Walsh-Healy Act was passed. Although it only applied to contractors doing business with federal agencies, it was the first time the government directly imposed health and safety standards.
We did everything we could to protect ourselves, at least I did, but there were so many that just were overexposed, cutting a huge plume of dust and not realizing that you just simply can't blow this stuff out of your lungs or your nose. We have a disaster going right now throughout the country. It's just scattered in a bunch of different areas throughout the industries.
As you can imagine, aggregate mining, there's the ability for fugitive dust to leave the mine itself, especially if it's not properly burned around the mine itself. And in some cases, we have seen that where dust is being flown into people's homes, people are breathing it in and getting sick.
Community people are there 24 hours a day. People leave the house, but they live there. They're not only workers, but they're children and they're pregnant women.
Dust cloud after all the other dust that's flowing from the quarry off these piles.
Well, 20-some years ago, we weren't, thinking about the issues of cutting concrete, the dust levels, and blowing the joints out on the road, for sealing and stuff. I worked in that too, sealing the roads and stuff. So there was that issue of, sandblasting the joints for the sealing. But we really didn't, we weren't looking at, the exposure like they are today, lowering the standard.
The standard for silica in the workplace was made better under the Obama administration. It was lowered to the general workplace. There was a lot of worker support for that. The standard in mines did not change, not because the workers were not in favor of it, but the companies, the mines, fought very hard against that. If you look at the states that have silica standards for the community, those levels are much lower than we allow in the workplace. Michigan doesn't have anything like that.
We had lived in my house that I built here. In 2010, I found out that there was an agreement that they were going to annex the quarry that was in the township, a mile down the street from my house. We didn't know about frac sand mining or any of those things. You know, and for a couple of years I didn't know about frac sand mining. Most of this was going on in Wisconsin and I thought it was a special sand. No, it was this sand.
Now my wife would get really mad if she saw me doing this.
I had a whole classroom at Columbia University.
Really? Even in the 80s, we were really concerned about silica in our operations. And there's not much known about the off-site, exposure, the non-occupational exposure to silica. OSHA and my OSHA has recently lowered the amount of silica to be in the air in the workplace. But no one's really looked at what's happening to the people across the fence line. Here's that article right here about crystal crossings, fugitive dust in the community, in people's houses from the plant. So that's just part of it.
Right.
There's another section too. So
The crazy thing is, look, if you think about the comparison, if that was an asbestos mine, we would not be sitting here talking right now. You know? So,
The special sands are bad. It's like
no, but it kills you the same way. It's the same thing. Yeah. Uncontrolled scarring of the lungs.
So he's trying to communicate that to people. This stuff is dangerous, It's not just, sand, beautiful, little beaches, blue sand,
Oh, yeah.
Especially sandblasting. Sandblasting
Yeah.
is freshly fractured silica. It's
Right.
metal and it fractures in the
Yeah.
piece.
I had one of the lawmakers say, well, I can't take my family to the beach anymore. I wasn't speaking, so I couldn't say anything. And I was just biting my tongue. This guy has no idea. He did this line on one side, but the other, that's the part that really made me understand the whole process with the silica standard. It was, we're not safety. Silica and disease doesn't care if you're Republican or Democrat. It doesn't care if you're union or non-union. It doesn't matter. But when you try to get something done, it's just everyone lines up to their side. And there's those that are opposed to any kind of regulation, no matter how common sense it is.
It's people have told me that. You're trying to shut them down. I'm never going to shut them down. It's never going to happen. I just want to control their dust. I just want to measure the stuff and make sure it's healthy for everyone. Myself, my wife works for a little post office in town. She's exposed. When the wind's blowing that way, she's working in the house. There's been high winds blowing that way for a couple days. They had literally inside the box, going through the boxes, landing on the floor, sweeping it up, and you can see it white dust. Yeah, so everyone's exposed. No doubt about it. This is what I've been putting out in the community, trying to get people on board. I'm trying to get people to buy them because of the quarry road river piece of paper.
What's that, Dolby's?
Yeah, so they were cheaper, and it went up in price, but by buying 26 of them, I got down to $255, which is, nothing compared to your health.
Right.
And it makes the quarry regulate the air. Otherwise, it just goes in the air and flows off.
Now, you're going to have them and all around it, though?
What my plan is strategically to put them in areas where the wind's blowing to the east, next to the school especially, in the population areas, and people know there's a dust problem. You know, they know there's dust.
But it's not just dust.
Right.
That's the problem.
Believe me, you know those logos, it's not just dust.
Yeah, we have like hard hat stickers with that on. Yeah.
That's an ocean.
Oh, yeah.
Put them up and down the road.
I would say keep it simple and let these folks know that, look, this is, I'm just giving you advice. This is the same, the disease is just like asbestos. I mean, it kills you the same way.
So the influence that the aggregate industry has in Lansing is huge. The Michigan Aggregate Association is a big lobby in Lansing.
The mining industry is a pretty powerful organization in Lansing, has been for a number of years.
You know, they have a lot of different, members and other businesses that, support them and are showing up and lobbying, in support of their causes and issues.
This is still a lot of strong business. You have allies from both the business sector and the union, the labor sector with unions. So you have kind of this mix where labor is looking for jobs and mining is providing them. At the same term, we have a lot of interest in understanding more and more now that we have active mines in the state. In the UP on some of this issue, and then on aggregate mining, we've of course had mines for a long time. We're seeing more and more residents and others seeing the actual long-term impacts of these sites and having that concern be raised more and more.
With that, one of the things that the aggregate industry does is that they bully communities. They come in with their lawyers and make threats to these communities, especially the ones that they know are resource strapped. They know with making threats, they can get their way because they know the community doesn't have the ability to fight back. So we're seeing that in some instances across the state where they are coming in and making some threats, through legal reasons and means to get their way with these projects.
Many communities across Michigan are experiencing aggregate mining right now, and there is the constant push for growth of those facilities and expansion, and the second of new facilities.
I think it's a deplorable situation that a little town is going to be ruined by big money and the arrogance of the gravel industry people.
Metamora has kind of been the heart of this aggregate mining discussion for decades. There's a Boy Scout camp in the community that a developer has wanted to mine for a long time.
What you're looking at here is an area of Metamora Township, and to give you a reference, we are right here at the White Horse Inn. Our 4 gravel mines are outlined in blue. So we've got 4 existing gravel mines in the township of Metamora. They've all been permitted. They've all been working mines. They're all on a scale that is appropriate to our township, and they've been here for years, and they've been good neighbors. What the levy company is proposing is a more industrial-sized gravel mine on the Boy Scout property. And this is the DBRA Scout Ranch. There was another gravel right over here, pretty loud. So this is 1,300 acres that the DBRA Boy Scout Ranch owns. The lower half is zoned Agricultural 1. I butt the Boy Scout camp about right there. saying that the Boy Scouts were asking for a rezoning from Agriculture 1 to Ag 2. What Agriculture 2 has in its definition is that you can mine. So the Boy Scouts are asking for a zoning change for about 630 acres. As you can see, the problem that the township has with this application, not only is its size, not only do we have a problem with the size, the industrial size of mine, we have a problem with the fact that it sits about 2,000 feet away from a designated environmental protection Superfund site. This Superfund site, in the past 8 years, is now leaking 1,4-dioxane into the aquifers. The aquifers in my neighborhood are contaminated. The first aquifer is contaminated, the second aquifer is contaminated, and the bedrock aquifer is now contaminated. My well and those of my neighbors have all been condemned, and I can't drink the water. And you can see here's the landfill here. Here's my house, and then here's the proposed site.
The idea that local mine would be expanded would impede on not only the community, but an adjacent contaminated plume. And what that does to the hydrology of the groundwater to move the plume in ways not yet predictable.
You know, this is next to a registered Superfund site, and what's the groundwater contamination situation look like? And are you going to be surfacing like dioxane through this process? Local residents are very concerned about this for a number of reasons, given the character of the community, where it's located in some of the wilderness out there.
The natural areas that are nearby, that maybe it's a private hunting ground, or again, a community that just wants to have more of a pastoral existence. It doesn't want the constant truck traffic through the downtowns. It doesn't want the nuisance concerns. It wants the ability to shape their own future, to shape their own quality of life.
It defies logic that you are going to start an industrial-sized mine practically on top of a Superfund site. That is just, it's stupid. It's just beyond words. And as you can tell, I'm a little upset about the whole situation.
So yeah, Metamora is definitely a part of this issue, but it's a symbol and a really good case study for what's happening statewide, because it's more than Metamora.
The levy company and Big Gravel has now gone to the state, and here we are with Senate Bills 429, 430, 431, which is now trying to strip away our ability to control what's happening in our communities. And this is not only going to affect our community now, it's going to affect every other community in the state of Michigan.
Continue to protest the proposed asphalt plant by holding a vigil for the death of clean air in their community.
Asphalt plants can create air toxins that can cause cancer, rashes, burning eyes, lung problems, which is especially egregious during COVID. And people in Flint already have pre-existing health issues because of exposure from the water crisis. Like I, for one, have psoriasis, which is an autoimmune disorder that I got from living through the water crisis here. And I'm definitely not alone. There's also an incinerator called Genesee Power Station that's right next to the Ajax land. And that's already attributed locally as a cause for why people have high levels of asthma already and breathing problems. And then in River Park, which is the public housing complex across the street, for accessibility reasons, the residents with the most pre-existing health issues and mobility issues, like people on oxygen, they're located close to Carpenter Road, which so that they can get onto buses and so on easily, but it also means that they're going to have the greatest exposure.
These are black and brown families primarily that are going to be harmed by this. And it seems that with my work being mostly in environmental and racial justice, we see this so many times that these black and brown people are left out. They aren't allowed the time for public comment. They aren't allowed the resources or the knowledge to be able to speak about the injustices that's happening right there in their backyards.
Just thinking about, for instance, like where we're at, like my kids catch the bus right up here. So it's like they're outside, standing out in the air, you know, and just knowing that our air, you know, the air is being polluted, you know, just those different things. Like kids are always out here walking back and forth, like, or they're outside playing while the weather is still kind of good. So it's like just knowing that all of this is happening, you know, most parents think it's okay for their kids to go outside. We want our kids to go outside and have fun. And it's just the little things, you know, and it's just really disconcerting our youth. And it's like, it just sucks because like they're not thinking about the youth. They're just thinking about their agenda.
Yes, we do need these roads. Yes, we do need asphalt. But what we don't want to do is inadvertently create another environmental injustice for the people that are living right here. These people have had people constantly lie to them. They have told them that their water was fine. They have told them that everything was going to be okay. They have poisoned them. They have exposed them to radiation, and now bad air, it's not okay. So, and what we need to do is keep those things into consideration of how these next steps will impact the people as a whole.
Michigan ranks dead last when it comes to transparency and accountability of our government. That allows the ability for big special interests to come in and influence through ways of their power, their membership, also money. Money definitely talks. I know we hear about this at the federal level, but in a state like Michigan, where we rank dead last in these areas of ethics, accountability, and transparency, we are not able to shed the amount of light that is needed on the influence of money in our politics here in this state. The ability for people to take lawmakers out to dinner and use influence through that way and means as well is a problem too. Our lobbying reporting here in the state of Michigan opens the door for a lot of shady action to take place here in Michigan.
Take the ATV even and go see how far we can get you. Yeah, take the slow exhaust system to the back Well, this is accurate. They want to tear us down. I mean, I think they should try to use it for something. It's just hiking trails. Didn't have all this crap go back.
This is like a real high spot because you have this line here that we're on. This high spot runs this way, and then you have that bridge over there is moraine. And if you come around in this direction, it actually meets. So you can see like kind of like a horseshoe-shaped valley here. That all the meltwater was coming down and rushing down this way to the ancestral Huron River and into Lake Erie. And we're kind of in a valley between the two glacial fronts. So we have a lot of sand and gravel deposits here. This area was mined as early as the early 1900s. There's groundwater contamination at one of the parcels. There's up police. There's two of them in this area. The other one had the township dump on it. So it was mined, used as a dump, and it has groundwater contamination. And this is where you want to start mining. Both of these in my opinion, were poorly thought out areas to draw for mineral lease. Behind us, we're here at another parcel that was clear cut in preparation of leasing it for mining. And you can see again we have steep banks that appear to be the result of mining. You know, it's clearly been mined in the past. There's a lot of evidence for it a little bit. Behind me is the old township dump. Ran up until about 1970 or so, I recall. And pretty much anyone in the township dumped whatever they didn't want their house into that valley in here. They drove up here and heaved it over. I've got aerial photographs. Looks like there's appliances. Who knows what for cars. And when you have those kind of issues, those kind of waste in there, we're finding that's a good source of PFAS. And this site has never really been investigated by Eagle for anything except for the sodium chloride plume coming from the wastewater plant. Right back on that ridge, there's a neighborhood back in there. Very nice houses. It had a nice private woodlot behind them. Until it was clear cut by the DNR, right up to their property line in cases. They're on, a lot of them are reverse osmosis systems because of the contamination in the groundwater.
The MSU extension, they project that once the ground is level, just be 4 or 5 years that they're going to have to be perpetually killing this type of stuff. If they started the project tomorrow, we're probably looking at 2035 before this thing is anything. And, you know, when I talked to the DNR, I said there's a lost opportunity clause for what you're doing because you're delaying stuff a whole generation of people. If you look at key resources, they're concentrating on, it'd be air, it'd be the forestry or land, it'd be water. They're missing the most key resource this country or this state has, and that's the human beings, the citizens, and they're ignoring that. And they basically did an in-person press release. They were shocked when we got almost 800 people show up. That is how much interest is in it when you have 800 people show up. And I think our analysis has done that. We have probably, I think it's 14 or 1,500 households registered on our site right now. So that's extremely good. And the Sierra Club has a consultant working with us. So Mike is part of the Sierra Club organization. And this individual is just so impressed on the amount of community support for this. So it's not something we're just doing ourselves. It's neighborhoods a mile away are very interested in this.
We do have a question here about what is the benefit to the local community to have the project implemented. It's about green space, right? We talk about the benefit of having more green space or open park-like settings, places to walk in, and you honestly, you wouldn't get that. So I can't respond to this.
stores replacing the four-axle gravel haulers, bringing heavy roads and disrupting traffic patterns. I can't imagine following gravel haulers on Chilton to last on its way to 96. Could the fresh air we once breathed be replaced by the toxic plumes of airborne silica dust blowing into our neighborhood? Could we be exposed to health issues such as silicosis, COPD, kidney and lung disease? Could our property be in peril and the value of our homes in jeopardy? This community deserves better. The children who have to grow up and play in this environment deserve better. To our senior citizens who take their daily walks and plan to live their golden years in a peaceful, pristine environment, they deserve better. I am confident and hopeful the state can do better. Today, my friends, we live in a contentious world. Political issues can divide families, friends, and communities. I am confident that my friends on the right and my friends on the left are united and against this potential land travel. Our health, our homes, and our way of life. Thank you.
And I've developed mines in my career in the past. I worked for mining companies and oil and gas companies, both exploration, development, and environmental. And things can be done right. And a lot of the current mines operating, sand and gravel mines in Michigan, are really permitted properly. They overlooked a lot of issues, and it can be done right. And that's all we want. We're not against mining. We know we need aggregate. We're not denying that. But we need to do it in the proper places and the proper regulations, and that can be done. It just takes a little bit of money, and companies just don't want to spend it. To put up proper berms and operate properly is a little more expensive. And a lot of these miners just kind of want to keep operating like they always do. And we have to change. We've learned. A lot of these companies, they still think it's 1920. And as far as environmental regulations, I see lakes created illegally, wetlands destroyed, and fugitive silica dust leaving mines that looked like it was like a fog. It was so thick, and entering homes. And then the people in the homes are breathing it 24/7 as it gets recirculated. They can't even sit with their windows open because of the dust coming from the mine, and there's no enforcement.
This is an issue where both Democrats and Republicans are supporting the bill packages. And so I don't think people can assume that just because they have a Democratic legislator, they're opposing this. Just because they have a Republican legislature, they are supporting it.
I think in the immediate moment, it is time to contact your local government officials and your state level officials. Absolutely. Contact the sponsor of the bill, contact your particular representative and state senator, contact the governor's office and express your opinion. Talk about the value of the land to you, the value of space, what it means. Talk about peace and tranquility and the quality of life that are important to you in your local community, and connect it directly to the legislation on the table.
Lawmakers and their staffers are tracking phone calls, emails, and messages, on a daily basis. The more they hear about the issue, the more they hear about a concern of a specific issue, the more likely they are to give attention to it and share that concern as well.
People should know where their legislature stands, and if they find out that they are supporting it, should talk to them about it and talk to them about the things that they're concerned about.
And then also seeing if there's a local group within your community already fighting on these issues, and if not, there's also a wide variety of environmental groups and other groups who are fighting these issues on a daily basis as well.
I think in the longer term, we need to have a conversation about nature itself. In American culture, we're a little bit shy about talking about the natural world.